All right, we're back. This is game three or match or rule set three. Or how are they numbered? I don't know. The point is, we saw Akiyama win the Open. I think a well played match on both sides, where both found really nice, not necessarily out of a center opening, because the order in one game was 5-1-2, and the order in the other game was 7-5-4. But both playing that side move, kind of either grabbing safety or creating a challenge where the natural way of kind of locking in a card doesn't really work. And Akiyama managed to defend it from, I think, a quite dangerous position and found the clearest way to defend it. And Stuff played what looked like the natural way to defend it, but it did not quite work, and Akiyama took the win. Then I showered during the closed game, as I promised you I would. And Stuff was able to win that on first turn. I only saw the final move of the game where it's not clear Akiyama had captures, but he went for one of those you can play in the side square and try to grab more cards, or you can play in the corner and have a higher number facing out. Now, given the card he played, it's not obvious he had captures from the side, but he ended up going in the corner and walking into Zidane. And so Stuff takes game match two. It did seem like if Akiyama, because the Don was facing the wrong way, so it hit the corner but didn't fit the side, that if Akiyama had played 8, he could have tied or even won if he could take an A, but I don't think it's likely he could take the A there. I think that was a pretty good position for Stuff, and as said, Stuff takes the win. So now this is a rule set 3. We have closed again, which means that this could be a match decided if Stuff is able to win both closed, another match decided without winning the Open. We saw Vid beat DJ double closed, losing the Open. We saw Stuff take out Delial double closed, not losing the Open, but not winning it either. And we may see that again here. We may also see Akiyama pulling through. He does have first turn. All rules are in effect. The main stips are no rares, must use 1 level 7 and 2 level 8s, and must use at least one of each number. Are there any cards with a 1 to the right and an A down? I doubt it. There's a certain type of player here, and especially if your hand has to make sure to have some, like a 2, 3, and 4 in it as well, it seems unlikely you'd have a second 1. There's a certain type of player here who on second turn goes in 6 and says, I don't believe you can lock that in, and I want to make some combo threats against you. I'm terrified to do things. I don't believe you can go in 8 without setting up a combo chain. I find that really scary to do because on second turn, I do not like setting up huge combo chains unless they are very tightly controlled, and they are not tightly controlled there. The person who goes in 8 gets to determine the interaction with 5 and 7. But players that are good at close do it, so I'm probably underestimating it, and it's just not in my wheelhouse. But it is an idea that comes to mind, given how people tend to play, and given that we did see a starter with this very weak, unlikely to be easily recaptured number facing out. Also interesting to think about corners. This is a corner card. That means the level 7 was used as a corner card. What you might expect to see is the level 7 as a utility card and the levels 8s and 9s as the 4 corners. And I think there's a decent chance we see that in Stuff's hand. Now, Akiyama tends to do less traditional hand making, and as we saw in the last set, very effective hand making. This is not an attack on his hand making. I think he finds nice ways to get cards to fit together. Has a nice feel for that. But it is to say, do we now expect double corner for 7? Do we expect one of the higher level cards to be a utility card? Or should we just not be making firm predictions? Akiyama is one of the very few players who... Okay, very quick play here. Akiyama is one of the very few players who, when given a rule set like 2 level 9s, tends not to make... Or like 2 level 8s, I'm remembering a level 8 set, where it was a split level set and you had 2 level 8s. And I think he picked 8-9-6-2s, or like an 8-9-6-2 and an 8-9 something else for the other corner. But he didn't do opposite corners. He just did like one of them was 9-8 facing out from 9, and the other was 8-9 facing out from 7. And it was just fine. It just worked totally fine. And it's neat to see what I would call non-traditional hand making. We have a three corners position. I do remember, well, that's a fun saying. I do remember Akiyama saying that the three corners position was his favorite type of thing to defend on second turn. On a structural front, Akiyama, I think, should go 4. Not necessarily true, but I think more true here actually than normal. If you imagine there's no combo here and that both players can take whenever they want, as I often talk about the all capture game, 4 is the only move that wins. Because if you go 6, you lock in 1 card, but they go 5 and lock in 2. If you go 4, you lock in 1 card, but they can only lock in 1 card in response. If they go 6, they lock in 1, and you lock in 2 and 5 in response. You lock in 2 and 6. If they go 5, they lock in 1 and 2, and you go 6 and you lock 2 in response, 3 and 6. If they go 7, they lock in 0, and you can lock in 2 from 5, etc. So the point is, you will have more lock-ins on the following turn than they do this coming turn if you go in 4, which is not true if you go in 6. If you go in 6, you lock in 1 card, they go in 5 and lock in 2, and you can only lock in 1 on that next move. So, in general, 4 is a little more desirable than 6. But it can be really hard to play because the board is messy and you don't necessarily have the right cards left. And it's easier to play in 6 and have your remaining cards make sense for the end game. So you see a lot of people play in 6 here, and I'm not sure that's wrong, but I do think 4 is better. And I think one reason 4 is especially maybe better here is the combo chains are pretty limited. With these A's facing out and that same in 2, the game is a lot more like the always able to capture no combo game than it would normally be. So I like this move a lot. And we can see that Akiyama has not played a corner yet for 7. We should be putting more effort into reading Akiyama's hand for 2 reasons. One is first turn has to play all 5 cards, so we will have most turns, have, at least half, we will for half of turns have seen more of Akiyama's hand than Stuff's, and we will not get kind of finality on Stuff's hand, but we will on Akiyama's. And second of all, it really matters if you're the second turn player, avoiding combos on the final turn. So having a good sense of what the final card can be is really valuable. No, we have seen a corner for 7. We have not seen a corner for 1. So Akiyama likely has a corner card for 1 that is either a level 8 or level 9. We don't know which, because the 9249 is a level 8, and an unknown card that is hard to predict. Interesting. There's no same wall, which is an incentive against playing opposite A9 corners. I would not predict that Akiyama would have an A9 corner for 7 with an A up and 9 to the right. If he did have an A9 corner there, I expect it would be a 9 up and an A to the right, but it's hard to judge. Meaning, for instance, and also we've seen 2 2s in his hand. It's just hard to have that many more 2s. We know he needs to show a 3 in his hand. I think he's shown every other number. But it means I don't think he has a same for 5. I would bet pretty strongly against that. Stuff, I think, has an A9 corner for 9, a 9-8 corner for 7, and a utility card on level 7. That's my prediction for Stuff's hand. But I think this was good play from Akiyama. A lot of people go 6 kind of automatically. We also don't have evidence that Akiyama has a very good card for 6. If you go in 9 and they go in 3, you can block 6 immediately, but they get a free L and they probably have a lock-in 3. So what do you do if 6 is a bad square for you? Unless you get rid of it immediately, you don't really have a way to play around it. So, given that I don't think Akiyama would play 6 there very often, I think we just don't know anything about whether he has a good card for 6 against 3, because he played 9 before 3 was played. So we just don't have evidence if he had good play in 6, and we could see he used the 9249, which had some play in 6. You know, it had the plus wall and it had a capture, But as we can see from stuff playing a 7-8-6-4, it was extremely susceptible to combos. A and 9 are very close to each other. Stuff blocks 6. So, I think Akiyama has a corner card for 1 and an unknown card. You can go in 5 here. You can go in 7 here. You don't really ever go in 8. You'd need to have crazy good combos in 7 to go there, and you're almost certainly just playing for a tie. So if you need to force a tie and you have the perfect card, you can go 8. But that card needs to be able to combo through 8 to hit 9, or you potentially lose. Now maybe they never risk comboing flipping through 9, because that can flip 6, and then you could actually win. But you really need to have the perfect card, and you need to really want to tie here. Now, I don't think Akiyama has 5, so I think it makes sense for stuff to say, I dare you. And this is a scary spot for both players, because if Akiyama plays 5 and stuff can combo it, stuff probably wins. And if Akiyama plays 5 and stuff combos it, and Akiyama can combo back, Akiyama definitely wins. So it's just like a scary position both ways, and I'm not entirely sure how to evaluate it. I don't have a good feel for these positions. I think I handle them badly, which is part of why I tend not to play these structures enclosed, because I think they're difficult. I did get a win on second turn in the weekly closed out of this type of structure. He does go 5. He indeed did not have the capture of 2. We see he did have a 4th corner. But this means stuff is running on almost 0 information. Also, that 9 facing down is probably a really good number to have facing down. With the 7-8-6-4 out of stuff's hand, that seems a really unlikely thing for stuff to be able to combo. You can see stuff did have opposite corners, 3 and 7. Not opposite level 8s, so his level 8 is still kind of out in the open. His level 9 is likely an A9 for the 9 square, which means if Akiyama can combo a 9 facing out from 8, my bet is he wins. But an A9 and 8 seems like the natural thing to do if you have it, which I think he does. Even if you don't have it in the opposite configuration to the 3-9-A2, it's like, I don't know, 9-4-4-A or something, you probably still play it in 8 and hope they can't take it. So there is a question. If you're Akiyama here, would you rather be able to combo a 9 or an A? I'm taking 9. I was wrong. Alright, I was wrong. Good for me. Yeah, so as I said, if you have the other A9, you still play it in 8. Now, Akiyama has a utility card, which is kind of more likely to hit an A than a 9, but I'm not sure. No, he did not have a utility card. I didn't keep track of what level he had left. So I was completely wrong. The other way would have tied 2 because it would have flipped 5, but mostly wrong. What did we learn here? Akiyama did play a double corner, and the level 7 did indicate what the other corner was. His 8-7-6-1 had the plus wall and 6. He did do opposite A9s. Interesting. But as I suggested, they weren't opposite and that the A9s were facing the same way. And stuff did the same thing, which I probably should have realized, because I did realize without same wall, you probably don't want them being a direct pair, and neither player did. So that's interesting. So moving forward, if we see this again, we should expect these slightly off pairs, maybe from both players. But if they start expecting that, that's really interesting information for them, of course. Because if you see 9A44, you should be predicting an A9 in the other corner, but not Eden, but the slightly off-turned one. Interesting. All right, so we get a tie. Interesting game. I like how both played it. We got a 3 corners. Stuff took the big same, which you should probably take. Akiyama, I think, correctly went 4. Stuff went 6, saying you don't have 5. Indeed, Akiyama did not have 5 and was like never going to have 5 there. Akiyama has to pick then between 5 and 7. He picks 5 with, I thought, a really difficult number facing out for stuff to take, especially after seeing the 7-8-6-4 out of stuff's hand. And knowing that he had a level 9 left, it just seemed really unlikely he had good play against that and a good sweeper for the end. Yeah, I think this was just correct from both players. No complaints here. Except that, like, I would drop a card in 5. Like, I probably would have played 8-7-6-1 in 5 instead of 9. But that's not a complaint. That's, like, a stylistic difference where I may well be objectively wrong. It's not a card his hand is great play against. Yeah, maybe the corner is just more sensible here. Alright, we'll pause while we wait for another game or to see if I have to go do other stuff. Alright, and we're back with set 3. We see another double corner hand from Akiyama where he uses one of those corners immediately as his starter. We see another double corner hand from Stuff. Not another, we don't know what he ran last time. We see very few double numbers. A's are likely to be quite strong here. Again, the whole must have one of each different number thing makes it harder to have double numbers in the hand. We also see offset level 8s again, or level 9s again, where the A and 9 are not parallel, which makes sense to me. Now, let's check Akiyama's recaptures on this. Every recapture he has from 4 might be well met by 3A9, 4, and 1. Okay. Worth noting. Every recapture Akiyama has an 8 is comboed by A295 or 1789, except for 943A, and you can't same wall that. So this seems like a starter. There might be some incentive to attack immediately. For instance, I could see 1789 and 4 being quite appealing. 3A9-4 covers 9s facing out from 1. If 8-9-1-5 and 5, you have an 8, you have 8-6-4-7. If 2-6-8-9 and 8, you have A2-9-5. And if 9-4-3A in 8, you can take it with A2-9-5. And it's kind of difficult to take back. Their only recapture is 9-4-3, is 3-9-A2. And that can be comboed by 8-6-4-7 and 6. So I feel like the recaptures are not very clean here. And that by playing 1, 7, 8, 9, and 4, or something like it, you might have some initiative here. I don't see another clean way to attack it. You certainly don't have to attack it. I just like taking things these days. I used to really never take starters, but especially another thing is like the less you're playing, the less you have a good feel for stuff, and the more I tend to rely on like what's a line I can calculate a little further. If I go somewhere like 3, the game is kind of vague, and it's going to be hard for me to pick out what's the critical line. 3 might be a really good move, but it's going to be harder for me to differentiate stuff that's good. Well, on the other hand, 1, 7, 8, 9, and 4, I can just say, yeah, this looks hard for them to find a comfortable move. There's not so many options. They're kind of limited. They don't have great options in 1. They don't have good options in 8. Then you check 2. Do they have good options in 2? Maybe, but even if they set up something in 5, we're going to take 1 for free, and they go 5, and we'll have choices between 3 and 8, and I shouldn't be upset there. So, I like the look of 1, 7, 8, 9, and 4. The big corners look pretty well covered. Notice our players have basically opposite cards for their big corners this game. But it's usually the card at the same corner that covers. Akiyama's hand has the sort of slight incidental advantage, which is Akiyama's 943A covers A259's 9, but A259 does not cover 943A. And 39A2 covers 3A94, but 3A94 does cover 39A2 in response. So that one's a little more balanced, but a slight sort of backside combo advantage to Akiyama here. You'll also notice Stuff did a little more kind of optimizing the power on cards. 1789 is obviously more raw power than 8915. 8647 is usually, though it depends on distributions of cards, a little more powerful than 7458, and I would think is a little more powerful here as well. But Akiyama tends not to do a ton of kind of raw power optimizations. He tends to find some, I don't know exactly, but he tends to find cards he likes, and they tend to work together pretty well. He's not picking reliably the kind of, this is the overpowered cards that everyone else picks, but that can lead to a number of benefits. For instance, we saw in the open set, he was the quickest and the most strongly jumping over to 2s instead of 3s on the backside, which most people kind of dabbled in, and he, the first game he went a bit more for, and the second game he said, no, I think 2s are correct, not 3s. Okay, we see 1, 7, 8, 9, and 3. Should start putting this game in the database. We have Akiyama stuff. 7, 4, 5, 8, 7, 1, 7, 8, 9, 3. This is a move Akiyama certainly has covered, but this is also a good point. Like, Akiyama's starter is not one that's easy to build out from. And Stuff is clear recaptures. Yeah, his hand was clearly designed to have this as an option. Was this the hand Stuff ran last time? Did he just run back the same hand? Pop open a window to get history. History, the previous game. Last game, Stuff played 1789. He played 7864, so we switched that up. He played 943A, so we switched corners. The last game he had 39A2 and 943A. This time he switched to A259 and 3A94. Similar things, yeah. And Akiyama switched to the 2 level 9s that Stuff had just used, which is pretty funny. He does that quite a bit. Okay. But yeah, Stuff has a clear starter here. Makes sense. Akiyama goes for 3 corners in open, saying my 943A is fantastic and is going to land really well in 6 or 8. It's hard to argue with that. Stuff may also find himself with a down weakness at some point. If that 3 facing up could be punished by 39A2 and a bunch of endgames. Note, there's no same wall, so A259 can't punish back. Okay, no, I like this move. My instinct is this is quite good. I really like building out from starters or attacking the card they played on opposite corners. And Akiyama tends to be kind of similar. I remember doing some data just on like what moves people like. And in opposite corners positions, I was one of the most likely to play next to my starter. And Akiyama was one of the most likely to play next to the card the opponent had just played. But we both had just in general a really high rate of playing in sides out of an opposite corner position, rather than playing in the center or one of the corners. So interesting to see this, but you can see how it plays really nicely with the 943A. Akiyama is always good at finding synergies of his cards. He does have 3 covered from 2. Very unlikely to have any extra added combo potential, but good coverage nonetheless. I don't see an obvious plan from Stuff. I'd probably, the first thing I'd check would be something like, okay, what about A259 in 8? If they go 4, I recapture from 1 and I'm safe. If they go 6 with Garuda, 943A, I'm probably just going 8926 and 2. And I'm up 6-4, and I've grabbed a few cards, and hopefully 8-9-1-5 is pretty clunky in that endgame, and 3-9-8-2 is not a very convincing sweeper. But maybe it is, because actually my only recapture from 1 of, well, my idea is if they go 5, I go 8-6-4-7 and 4, and I combo. But, so I guess they don't have a way to force this, but if they could play in 5 with something other than 8-9-1-5 and keep 3-9-8-2, it actually sweeps 3A-9-4 in both directions. The incidental combo is really favoring Akiyama if 3A-9-4 has to land on the left side and 3-9-A-2 is still in hand. But you have 8-6-4-7 and that can block 4. So I'd be thinking A2, 5, 9, and 8. Probably what I'd jump to. And I think that's the kind of move Stuff jumps to too, because as we've seen, and saw really to very good effect in the first game, he's very good about checking moves that offer any sort of safety. He's not so much drawn to moves that lock something in. For instance, his move in 4 in the first open game was safe, but did not grab the card in 1. He's fine sort of letting cards of the opponents get locked in, but grabbing safety himself. And he, I think, looks for those. Maybe it's just a sample of 1, I don't know. But it means I think there's a decent chance he's on 8 as well. Note Stuff is the same in 6. Not sure that's relevant to anything, but it is true. And the last time, we also saw him just play at 3 corners. Admittedly, that was closed, but he took safety in one of the in-between squares, and he also took a same. This game, he has a choice between a same and safety. Which will he pick? I think he'll pick the safety. I'm not sure what other candidate moves Stuff is likely to consider here. I don't think I've ever seen him do any kind of 4 corners thing. I don't think he's a guy who plays 5 much here, and I don't really know why you would play 5 here. Doesn't seem like the synergies are right. I know he has played in 2 or 4 in these setups, and there's a case for it. Because 9-4-3A is so good in 6 or 8 that, like, if you go in one of 6 or 8, Akiyama has a natural reply. But if you go 2 or 4 and he then grabs one of 6 or 8, now you might be able to grab the other. But you don't necessarily have good play for 8, so I'm not really sure why you do this. So I think we'll see 6 or 8, and I think we'll see A2, 5, 9, and 8. I'm sure there are many other playable moves. This seems like a position where there should be lots of ties, and the way you play is largely stylistic. Which is to say, it's not that there's no room for mistakes. I think there's going to be, like, losses everywhere. But where you look, like, there will be, like, at least one loss in any square you could play in. But where you look is going to be dependent on style, and then whether you find a tie there is going to be dependent on strength. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. All right, we see A2, 5, 9 in 6, proving me deeply wrong, because he took neither the same nor the safety. It is safe, though. I just missed that this was also safe. So he did take the safety. He just did not take the same. But I missed that this was also a possible way to do that. Now, this way, so the way I wanted to sequence it was go 8 and then 6 and then snag 2. Here, you're going 6 and then 8. Does that mean you're going in 4 and snagging 7? But that's a little clumsy to do because Stuff is no down. So what's the plan after 9-4-3A in 8? So you can't go 3A, 9, 4, and 4 because you're just comboed by 3, 9, A2. And you have no playback. You lose there. So you can't be intending to go 4. Maybe you have a way to block 4, but that seems annoying to calculate, so I'm not going to do it. You could play 5, but then you're presumably hit by 8915 in 2, and you're not going to have a way to block 3982 sweeping you. Like, you could play 8647 in 1, but 3982 will at least then flip whatever's in 5, and that'll be enough for the 6-4. So is the plan to block 5? The plan could be to block 5. But if you block 5, anything you put in 5 leaves 3982 with a double capture in 2. I'm not sure they take it immediately. Maybe they meet 4 with 8915 and 4. You meet 5 with 8915 and 4. This looks dangerous to me. I think Garuda in 8 here is a little scarier than in the line with A259 and 8, Garuda in 6. But I could easily be wrong. I would guess there's a tie there, but it's feeling right on that borderline to me. So I'm going to start checking with the solver because, per usual, I'm a little lazy. I think this is a clear advantage to Akiyama, and I have no idea if it's enough to win. My guess is no, but I also don't see how to not lose to 8. So do we go with, like, what I've calculated, or just, like, my feel for the position? Which will prove correct. This is great, because I've hedged my bets. Either way, I get to say, well, part of me was right, which is why people who go, like, my gut says this, but my heart says this, and then conclude, well, that was right, at least I was like, and sort of, like, gives the vibe of being partially right. No, I'm wrong either way. I have not committed to a decision, therefore, no decision can validate the claim I made because I didn't commit to an actual clear claim. Now, you could say I did in that it tells me something about whether I should trust my calculation or not. That might be true. But anyhow, after this move in 9, there were 10 ties and 14 losses, and there were basically ties everywhere except for 5. Yeah, looks like there were ties everywhere except for 5. The line I calculated was A2598, which gives Akiyama 1 tie, but it's 943A and 6, so it's a very obvious move to make. And then I wanted to play 8926 and 2, and this was indeed a tie. Okay, so that's a comfortable tie. This move in 6 is also a tie. But stuff has only 1 tie if Akiyama goes in 8. Didn't check what it was. So after Akiyama goes in 8, maybe we'll try to figure it out. Akiyama goes 8. If stuff goes 5, I really think 8915 and 4 should win. 3982 is just so strong there, and anything stuff put in 5 is combo susceptible, and possibly sets up 3982 to take 3. It either combos through 6, because it's 3A94, which combos to 3, or it's an 8 facing up, which directly gives 3. So I think it can't be in 5. If it's in 4, I think this is similar, because Akiyama can play with an 8 up and 5 if it's not a capture. Say it's not a capture, and he will sweep with 3982. That wins. If it is the capture, then Akiyama combos immediately. So I think it's not in 4 or 5. Did I check 2? I don't think I checked 2. Maybe it's just 8926 and 2 as well here. It's just fewer options, had to be a little more careful. This is definitely a little more dangerous for stuff than the other line, but as said, the solver did say it was a tie. So 8, 8926 and 2. Not 3A94 and 2, because that just sets up 3982 to combo you, but 8926. Then probably 8915 and 5, making it 6-4. And 3982 tries... but 8647 has the combo again. Yeah, so it should be similar. I think 8926 and 2 is the tie, but I should check 1 as well. Alright, we do see 943A in 8. I think the tie is 2 right now, but we haven't checked 1, and I haven't checked other cards in 2. But it's kind of easier to rule out 5 and 4. because you can say any card with an 8 up and 5 is met by 8, 9, 1, 5, and 4, and that makes it 6-4. You can only capture one thing at a time in response, and 3-9-A-2 is guaranteed to have a capture back. If it goes in 1, it can capture anything in 2. If it goes in 2, it can capture 3. So we know you will be up 6-4. They can only capture 1. You will capture at least 1, guaranteed 6-4 or better. Similarly, if they go 4 with 3-9-A-4, we combo it. We're up 6-4 because they go up 6-4, but then we flip 2 cards, and they have no captures, so we win. If they go in 4 with something else, we can go 5. It's 5-5, but 3-9-A-2 is guaranteed to get a capture if they go 1, and if they go 1, they can't flip anything. If they go 2, they can, but then 3-9-A-2 is guaranteed 2 captures, so we're going to get a plus score, and we win. So those are really easy to rule out. 1 is always a much bigger pain to calculate, so I don't like to do it. But we can quickly say 3A9-4 is plus walled from 4, and you have no captures, so that's going to be a loss because there'll be 6-4 with no captures. 8-9-2-6. I think there is. That's going to be annoying to check. All right, so let's skip that one for now. 8-6-4-7 as well. I hate calculating these. 8-6-4-7 is easier because there's 8-9-1-5 and 4, making it 6-4. You have to capture or you lose. Your only capture is the same, 8-9-2-6 and 2, and that is overpowered by 3-9-A-2 and 5. So my last move left in 1 is 8-9-2-6 and 1. There's 3-9-A-2 and 2, not flipping anything, but setting up a plus and 5, which would flip extra cards. So you have to block 5 because you can't flip multiple cards, so you need to block them flipping multiple cards or you'll lose. And anything blocked in 5 is swept by 8-9-1-5. Yes. So it can't be in 1, has to be in 2. We know there's a tie because I cheated. It can't be 3A9-4 because that's comboed. We know there's only one tie because, again, I cheated. Sorry about that. I should probably do less of that. So it's between 8-9-2-6 or 8-6-4-7 and 2. If 8-6-4-7, then I think there's 8-9-1-5 and 5 going up 6-4, and 3-9-A-2 just dominates that endgame. Yeah, because a plus wall is the only double capture. So it's got to be 8-9-2-6 and 2. So I think this is actually a relatively. It's not the hardest position of this type to calculate. There was a lot of grouping of moves we could do, where we could calculate multiple moves at once rather than have to check each of them separately. I think the first squares you check are probably the capture in 4 and blocking 5. But you check 2 next. You should check 2 next. So it should happen fairly, like, the middle of his thinking. Not like the very start, but not like a panic move you check at the end. And you have to spot that 8-6-4-7 has a plus in 4 if 8-9-1-5 lands in 5. That's the really critical thing to notice. If you don't notice that, you probably don't get it to work. Because otherwise it has huge problems, because 8-6-4-7 cannot recapture 8-9-2-6 from 1, and you need it to get the tie if you didn't have this plus, because 3-9-A-2 sweeps your other card. So I think there's a good chance he finds it. There's only 4 moves left. You know, you can brute force this, and the brute force is a little quicker than some are, because again, the more you can group moves and say like, okay, any card is met by this, and no matter what's left, you sweep them, the easier it is to check every move, because you just don't have to go through them one by one. So I think the correct move is like the 4th move he'll check out of 12 possible moves, 4th or 5th maybe, somewhere in that range. And you need to spot a plus to make it work. He has picked it up. Yeah, I think he has done it. I think he will get the tie here. Nice game from Akiyama. There clearly, I think, wasn't better stuff here. I think the only shaky move this game was stuffs in 6. That ended up actually being pretty close to losing from a position where probably shouldn't be quite that close to losing. Like, definitely worse, but not in quite this much danger. But I think we will see stuff nicely playing the tie and surviving in a tough game. Akiyama is very good at open. This has been a very impressive set of games from Akiyama. I should check the did I close the solver? I did close the solver. I wanted to check my reply to the starter to see if that was actual pressure or I was just making things up. I am wont to make things up, and as I said earlier, I am doing terribly at everything that involves having a brain in the last few days. So, often I'm wrong. Was for good pressure. Yes. It's not done calculating yet, but the answer is yes. If stuff had went in 4, Akiyama had 2 ties, and one of them was in 6, which just means it's not going to happen. And the other one was 8, 9, 1, 5, and 8, which actually probably isn't that hard to find. We could combo it, but they do have the combo back, and yeah, that's probably fairly straightforward. Okay, so very few ties, and you're not under pressure after playing it. I think it would have been a good move as a reply to the starter, but also not a big deal. Oh no! Stuff doesn't find it. So this was the move I had the hardest time refuting, but it's 3, 9, A2, and 2, and then 8, 9, 1, 5 sweeps. Because the point is, if you go in 4, then 3A9, 4, and 2 takes it back, and you build a wall of 9s that can't be taken. But you just have to go in 2. Akiyama wins. Yeah, honestly, he played a superb set of games. I think this was actually his weakest of the 3 in the Open. Because the first one in the Open, he faced a very, very dangerous starter from Stuff. The exact same thing that knocked Tezuka out, and with very similar hands, and found a really not comfortable, but I think basically the most secure way to handle it. Just very clean, tight play, under pressure, but second turn's going to be under pressure. And then the next game, he plays a different type of starter that somehow, much to my surprise, has even more pressure. Stuff plays one of the very few replies that hold a tie, and Akiyama finds the way to apply the most pressure, just controlling everywhere, and ends up pulling out the win. And then here, in the third Open game they play, he plays a weak corner, which I didn't love, but his 3 corners play really got a clear advantage. And after a slightly shaky move in 6, he plays the move he set up with his 3 corners play, and he spent a lot of time checking it, so he knew there was a tie there. He found the tie, and he was checking, can I do anything else? Eventually decides, no, this is the best move, plays it, and Stuff ends up missing the 4 moves left tie, which is a quite missable move, and Stuff ends up playing the move that was the hardest for me to refute of the losses, and the last move left on the docket. And maybe he probably just missed this move in 2, and so he thought this was a tie and didn't keep checking other things. Or he had ruled out 2 at some earlier point. But yeah. I think Stuff played well, and Akiyama played really, really well. I haven't caught Seto games, and we can only assume Seto is playing great. So of our 4 semifinalists now, because we have the 4 semifinalists, we have Seto versus Akiyama, which is always a really competitive match. They've played in lots of weekly opens. I think it's kind of close to 50-50. They played in Triad Wars 14, I want to say, and Akiyama won in the semifinals in one of the most impressive matches I've seen. As I said in that match, I gotta think Seto is slight favorite, but Akiyama is someone with a very legitimate chance to knock him out. And I think Akiyama played this match just beautifully. like my shakiest move for him in the whole match, and he made a number of moves that were clearly better than what I would have played. So I can't be like, I would have played this better because I think I would have played it worse and I would have lost to him in this match, basically just like Stuff did. Um, and I might not have won the close game, but Stuff won. So this is no criticism of Stuff, but this is to say I think the worst move he played the whole match was 7-4-5-8 and 7 as the starter here. And I think other than that, he was just flawless. And I don't know if this hand actually had a comfortable starter. Just that one is definitely under some pressure with correct play. So yeah, really great match from Akiyama. Again, I'm assuming Seto has played as well as he usually does, which means, he's probably tournament favorite, but man, Akiyama played well here. On the other side of the bracket, I think Turds has played superbly. I was also so impressed by his match against Tezuka. It was very similar to this match win for Akiyama, where it just felt like here is someone doing reasonable things, and here is someone who is just spotting every clever idea and just putting up some of their best games. I think this ended up being just a fantastically impressive round for Akiyama and Turds. Vid lost the open game to DJ. It is hard to defend the open rule set on second turn. DJ went with a 5 starter. DJ played really well. I think those are very dangerous. I also think Vid is very strong in this format. I think he's really good at making closed hands that click together, but are not obvious what cards you're going to see, and he's good at reading what you're going to be doing. I think Vid is a very combo synergistic player who tends to maximize winning chances, and this plays very well and very dangerously in closed. If I was giving odds, which I guess I am, I would have Seto as like 55-45 over Akiyama. I think ratings would give a slightly larger advantage, but it's not a blowout. Like, it's no more than like 63-37. And Akiyama, I think, is one of the most dangerous players to Seto. And then on the other side, I think Turds is probably bigger favorite over Vid, but I also think Vid is kind of undervaluedly excellent in this format. He hasn't won a TTAC. I don't know. I don't think he has like a finals run or anything, but his skill set is just so good for this kind of tournament and adapting to the stuff you'll be seeing. And I think Turds is also very good at that. I think, yeah, very strong semifinals. Between the 4 semifinalists, how many tournaments have they won? Akiyama has 1. Vid has 2. Nanaki and Garland. Akiyama has Adia, right? We can check that. That's easy to check. That's right here. 2. Winner, yeah, that's Adia. Seto has what, 5? Turds is 4 now? Yeah, I think Seto is 5, Turds is 4, Vid has 2, Akiyama has 1. This is 12 titles between them, soon to be a 13th. Yeah, it's really hard for me to bet against Seto, but I think this field are all people who can beat him. Like, with not like they could hit the 3% out. Like, they can legitimately beat him. And of course, closed makes that more chaotic and doable. Yeah, so really excited for these semifinals. Hopefully I get to catch them. Yeah, I think that's all we got. And just another really well-played match. These have been very strong quarterfinals.